You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orleck, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. Have you ever felt like you have to handle every conversation in your relationship perfectly? Like one wrong move, one wrong word could ruin everything? If so, you might be dealing with perfectionism in your relationship. Perfectionists tend to believe that if they just communicate the right way, at the right time, with the right words, they can control how their partner reacts. But here's the thing. Relationships don't work like a perfectly coded program, and the pressure to get it right often backfires, leaving you feeling more frustrated, unseen, and emotionally drained. So, here's what we're covering today: why perfectionism shows up in the relationships and where it comes from, how the need to get it right actually pushes your partner away, and a mindset shift to let go of control and build true connection instead. Okay, so I want to start this conversation by saying I am a perfectionist. I struggle with this concept all the time. In fact, I have been working on launching this podcast for nearly a year. And because I couldn't get it perfect, I couldn't put it out there into the world. It's been so vulnerable. And I've really had to work on this part of myself in a lot of areas of my life, even just to get this podcast launched. So let's talk a little bit about how perfectionism actually seeks to help us stay safe in a relationship. Perfectionism can be an adaptive way that we try to prevent disconnection in our relationship. So when we fear being rejected or abandoned by our partner in some way, it may drive us to perfectionism and people pleasing or trying to control the situation or outcome as a way to prevent that rupture in our relationship. It may come with this belief of, if I am not perfect, if I don't say it perfectly, if I don't do something perfectly, then my partner will leave me. They won't accept me. Or it might be that I have to be perfect and self sufficient in order to avoid being dependent on somebody else. Because if I'm too dependent on somebody else, I will inevitably get hurt. And let me get something straight: perfectionism is not all bad. Positive perfectionism is actually a really healthy drive for excellence. It's setting high standards and really striving to improve and grow and learn. When there are mistakes, that's seen as a learning experience. You're able to take something from that and work towards achieving more excellence in the future. But there's also negative perfectionisms, which is an excessive worry about making mistakes. The drive for this kind of perfectionism is often the fear of failure or being criticized or making mistakes. And those mistakes are seen as a really negative thing as opposed to something that you can learn from. So they take it as it'll make them look bad, or they tend to dwell on their shortcomings, and they have a lot of anxiety and distress and self criticism when it comes to experiencing mistakes or failures. And if you're a failure, and if you think about how that might come up in a relationship, that can be really detrimental. Often my clients find that perfectionism, which works really well for them often in their professional settings, where being detail oriented is really important. And then they come into their relationship and they try to use those same skills, but it's not as helpful because in a relationship, that becomes about control. And when two people are in a relationship and one person is trying to control it, or even worse, two people are trying to control it, then inevitably there's a struggle. And this is why perfectionists really struggle in their relationships. I can just think about times in my own relationship when I spent hours drafting a text to my partner. And maybe it was after a disagreement or when I wanted to connect about something. And I would just agonize over tone and punctuation and the exact right way to word my feelings. And my partner would respond with, okay, or a thumbs up, or a quick sounds good, something like that. And I would just feel so devastated and disappointed. And that's a moment that just highlights the mismatch in emotional labor where perfectionism really created distance instead of clarity. So, in this example, and in many other ways, perfectionism in relationships comes out as overanalyzing everything, waiting to have a conversation until you figured out the exact right way to say it so that your partner doesn't feel hurt or feel disconnected from you or get angry with you. You end up taking a lot of responsibility for the emotions of your partner, and you likely will even shut down or avoid conflict as a way of avoiding, quote, messing up and not getting it right. Perfectionists who often deal with negative perfectionism and shut down or pull away from relationships or try to control what's happening in their relationship so that they can feel comfortable often have a lot of self critique. There's an inner critic in them that tells them they're going to mess it up, tells them that they're not enough, they're not good enough for their partner, they won't be enough for their partner. But they may also be critical of their partner. Their partner isn't doing enough for them. Are you starting to see elements of yourself in what I'm describing? Or maybe you see parts of your partner in this? Can you imagine how devastating this would be for your relationship if this was part of it? But also how stressful this would be for you to be dealing with these kind of thoughts day in and day out, worrying that if you got it even a little bit wrong, the entire relationship could crumble. As with anything in this attachment world, this all stems from something that happened way before you're in this relationship. So often our childhood experiences lead us to wanting to be more perfectionistic. It feels nice when our parents praise us, tell us that we're good at something, and we feel loved and seen and valuable. That may be something that our parents did where they only praised us for being good, or they only praised us for achievements. Or it could be that that's just the time that you felt the most valued and loved. There may be cultural expectations that relationships only work if you don't fight, so you have to say things perfectly to avoid those fights. When in fact, conflict is a really normal and necessary part of all relationships. No matter how much couples therapy you might go to, you're never going to be able to avoid all conflict. And honestly, you wouldn't want to, because those are pieces of our life where we can grow together and understand each other more deeply and, in fact, create a lot more connection. Professionally, I see this with a lot of clients who are doctors or engineers or maybe even other therapists, basically people who excel in systems of precision and order. But relationships just aren't like that. They're messy and emotional and inherently imperfect. And when we try to shove them into a box, they lose something. They lose that closeness. And we start either taking meaning from it that we aren't enough, or we're sending that meaning to our partner that this relationship or they aren't enough for us. So here's the irony: the harder you try to make things perfect, the more disconnect you actually create. This is how it backfires. Your partner feels like they can't relax because when one person is always striving for things to be perfect, the relationship just ends up feeling tense. You might not say it aloud, but they can really feel the pressure. They're noticing the micro expressions that cross your face, the little behaviors that you have. They're looking for the signals and cues that tell them that it's not emotionally safe. From the outside, it really might feel like you're walking on eggshells around someone who's emotionally guarded but outwardly composed. It really creates a disconnect. You end up missing real emotional connection. You're so focused on saying things right that you actually start to lose authenticity. It's like showing up in a relationship with a script instead of your real self. You just don't get to connect with the real person. You become emotionally exhausted. It really is so tiring, overthinking every move, and it leads to burnout and resentment in the relationship. You may even start thinking, like, why am I trying so hard? It never seems to work anyway. I hear from clients all the time that they're rehearsing and practicing their speeches to their partners well before they ever get to them. And they start to say their rehearsed speech, they look at their partner, and they can see that they don't connect. And that's just so deflating and disappointing because they're trying so hard. They care so much about this relationship and they care so much about their partner that they're trying so hard to make it work and find the exact right words to say so that they can unlock that key to their partner's heart and feel more connected. But the problem is, they're not connecting because they're performing and aren't speaking from the heart at that point. They're so nervous about getting it wrong that they're robotic. And inevitably, that makes it feel less personal. So, this is where the big shift needs to happen. We have to shift from performing to being present. Instead of thinking, how do I say this perfectly? Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? How can I convey this vulnerability to my partner? Because what they want to see is inside you the real feelings that are coming up, the real fears, the real hurts. Even if it's hard for them to hear, they want to be connected to you, not this image of you that you're, quote, supposed to be. So you can practice saying something messy like, this is really hard for me to talk about, and I'm worried I'm going to say it wrong, but I want to try anyway. I want to connect with you. And just see how it goes. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Allow yourself to say to your partner, oh, that wasn't quite what I meant. Let me try again. Be prepared to embrace repair over perfection because really conflict is inevitable. Your goal isn't to avoid making mistakes, but to repair from them when they happen. When you can acknowledge and own a mistake that you've made, then you're much better able to go to your partner and talk about the things that are hurting you or scaring you or being able to hear what's going on with your partner. So, for example, instead of beating yourself up for reacting emotionally, come back and say, you know, I got frustrated earlier. What I really wanted to say in that moment was, and then try again. Let them know what you want to say now that you're feeling more in touch with those emotions, now that you're feeling a little bit calmer. Real intimacy is built on the moments where we reconnect after disconnection, not just from a flawless delivery. And you want to focus on being connected to your partner, not controlling them. You can't control how your partner responds, but you can control how you show up. And when I say that, I don't mean what you say as part of this perfect script. What you can control is showing up from the heart with your true feelings and vulnerabilities, telling them that they are important to you, that you don't want to be alone in this and you don't want them to feel alone. You can't control if they feel hurt or sad or scared. But what you can focus on is being present with them, engaged with them, and genuine. And ultimately, what that is going to convey is that they're not alone in what they're feeling, that you're right there next to them, and that you care about what they're going through. Ultimately, we feel connected and trusting of our partner when we believe that our feelings matter to them. So if you can convey that what's coming up for your partner, even if it hurts you, even if you feel frustrated, even if it triggers you to take a step back, if you can convey to your partner that through all of that, they are still really important to you and you want to work on this and you want to be more connected to them, that is the most important thing, not the specific words that come out. Because trying to make every conversation perfect is like trying to thread a needle while walking on a tightrope. It's tense, exhausting, and probably not the point. So let's practice letting go of the outcome. Ask yourself, what do I want them to feel in this moment? That mindset can lead to more vulnerability instead of strategy, because if what you want them to feel is connected to you and open to you and trust you, you might actually be able to have some input into that. And if not, then you can lean into repair when it comes back to how you had that misstep. So again, let's focus on shifting from performing to being more present, embracing repair over perfection, and focusing on connection instead of control. When we do these things, we're opening the door to some really deep connection. So let's recap. Perfectionism in relationships comes from the need for control. The pressure to get it right actually creates more disconnection. And real connection comes from being present, not perfect. So here's my final thought. Next time you catch yourself rehearsing a conversation, why don't you pause and ask yourself, am I trying to connect or am I trying to control? That small shift could change everything. If you've been nodding along during this episode thinking, this is exactly what happens in my relationship, but I don't know how to stop it, I made something for you. It's a free 7-day email course called Break the Cycle. Each day, I'll walk you through simple steps to stop the same fight from repeating and start rebuilding real connection without shutting down, walking on eggshells, or trying to do it all perfectly. You can sign up at my website. I'll link it in the show notes. It's totally free. This isn't just about communication. It's about breaking patterns that are breaking you. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorleck.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.